10,000 subscribers. So if you want to be lucky subscriber, we got 9.87 thousand. So I just need 1,300 more of you. I'm sure that's the number of people that are listening to this program right now. So if every single one of you listening subscribes, we will get to 10,000. That is our goal on our way to 10,000 subscribers. Please help us get there. So that's Baseball Corner is up. Easy for you to find. All you have to do is just scroll back a little bit. So they're under the live videos. Yeah, Nick and I went a little over an hour yesterday talking Cubs at the trade deadline, talking Royals at the trade deadline. And obviously, I'm a Royals fan. Got another Royals fan in the studio. Tristan, welcome to the Corner 3. Now you haven't talked much college basketball here, but first, how about Mike Yastrzemski?
I've always been a fan of Mike, especially with the Giants. I feel like he's a guy that maybe doesn't get the fame and glory that he, probably deserves. And it was pretty cool just first at bat. I was watching that last night and I was like, oh my gosh, there's no way Mike Yastrzemski just showed up as a Royal and just made his name known.
That's a guy that is older than I would have thought. He didn't debut till he was 28 years old in 2019, but he has never put up a season of less than 2 wins above replacement.
Yeah.
He's at an even 2 right now. He's already been in one game, put up 0.1 wins above replacement as a member of the Kansas City Royals with that 2-run homer in his first at bat. Finished 8th in the MVP voting in the shortened COVID season. Let's go back and take a look at who actually won it. So in the NL, it was Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, Juan Soto, Marcelo Ozuna, Trey Turner. Then how about Mike Yastrzemski getting 81 vote points? He did not get a single first place vote, but good for Mike Yastrzemski. That's going to be a fun pickup for the Royals. But of course, this is the Corner 3. We turn our attention to college basketball now on the program. And we're going to look at college realignment through the lens of college basketball. Obviously, we know that's not the driver. Obviously, we know that is not what is making these decisions. But Jim Root, who is on Twitter at Second Chance Points, really good college basketball follow guy that gives a lot of great data, a lot of great insight, wrote a guest piece here for The Athletic. And he said, what if college basketball ran conference realignment? We sorted all 364 teams to find out. Tristan, we'll start with this. We know the Big Ten's a coast-to-coast league. We know the ACC is now a coast-to-coast league. Big East, not quite so much, but it certainly expanded from where it was when you and I were growing up watching Big East basketball. We get it because of football. Do you think it's possible, first and foremost, to have conferences that split their football divisions, football conferences from their basketball? So just because you're a member of the Big Ten football conference, maybe you could be a member of the Big 12 in basketball or the Pac-12 in basketball. Do you think that's feasible?
I honestly think it is feasible just because there are a few smaller schools that do it already. I mean, Hawaii is in the Big West for baseball, basketball, pretty much every sport, but then football-wise, they're in the Mountain West. And so there's schools that have kind of done it and dealt with, multiple conferences. And honestly, with the basketball season, one being very almost like short and long at the same time, where you get to play 2 games a week, you're traveling quite a bit. It's a little tougher when you added, those West Coast schools to the Big Ten. And it's just a lot for the student athletes to go from Washington to Rutgers for a game. And then you got 4 days and you got to be back home to play another game. So I know it's not the driver and a lot of it just comes down to football, but I think it could happen. Not that it will, but I think it could.
It's going to be interesting to monitor because especially for those sports that, like you said, are playing multiple times a week, whether it's 2, sometimes even 3, if it's really jam-packed, that travel does get to be a lot. And I know the Big Ten is trying to find ways to make sure the schedule shapes up a little bit better here in year 2 of the system. But the Big Ten in football has really gone mini NFL, where, it might be cross country. You got some regional games, but they've done away with divisions, obviously. So you can't just bank on, hey, here are these 3 road trips we know we have every year. Big Ten is contemplating something like that in basketball. I know the ACC has done that in terms of here, you're at least your one home and home that you'll play every year. And then they lock in a second one, I think, on they play 2 years and then get a new partner, potentially rotating basis. But to me, it just has never made sense to have these massive mega conferences, right? Divisions are great to cut down on travel because they are still, student athletes. At least we're supposed to believe that. No reason that these conferences have to be so big, and especially structured around football. If you think about just the absurdity of, an Oregon team having to fly to Nebraska to play a game, then they make a quick road trip or a short flight to Iowa just to fly back to play 2 home games in a week. And then, they're probably going out to Ohio State and Penn State just to go on a California road trip, and then they're back home. it's asinine. It doesn't make really any sense at all. And so I do think that college basketball, honestly, would probably be the right sport to be that splinter league, because we know how much money the college football playoff makes. But what's the big moneymaker for the NCAA with the college football playoff outside of NCAA control? It's March Madness. And I think it'd be really good if those member schools that are kind of sort of not really in control of the tournament would say, hey, we can make this product better by not having these crazy schedules. Right now, the problem with that is the SEC is pretty regional, and the Big 12 is still relatively regional, all things considered. Actually, no, I take that back. I mean, that goes from West Virginia to Arizona. So, no, the Big 12, no, you're right. So, really, it's just the SEC is the non kind of nationwide conference. Maybe throw in the Big East there from the upper parts to the Great Lakes and Midwest here in Omaha with Creighton, of course. So, really, if the SEC thinks it can stand on that leg of, we're good, it's going to be really interesting to see how much they care, because I think the SEC does care more about basketball. I mean, like 14 teams in the tournament last year? It's crazy to see how far SEC basketball's come.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool last year to see how many SEC teams were in there and just how competitive it was from the start. I mean, you saw Missouri just knocking off one seeds or first-ranked teams all season.
Yeah.
And then you saw Florida, you saw Auburn, even Alabama, Tennessee. Just teams that were, making it to the Elite Eight, Final Four. And it does seem like they really care about their basketball. But with the SEC, it seems like it's very easy for them, since they are all kind of just so close, that it seems like with every sport, you're getting just the best of the best and just the best to watch. While in the Big Ten, I'll be honest, there's some of the basketball games this past season where I would, be watching Oregon go to Penn State. I was like, this just isn't great basketball, but for the reason that they're in a totally different time zone. They traveled 3 time zones to get there, and just the quality isn't as good as a team that maybe is traveling a little bit less.
Absolutely. So Jim Root, in this piece for The Athletic, went through and broke down all these conferences. Here's kind of what he was going for. He says this: what would the college basketball landscape look like if the sport were self-sufficient? I set out to reconstruct the entire layout of D1 with that hypothetical as my guiding principle. Perhaps the most important rule to fall back on is that of a truly balanced schedule. Double round robins, in which each team plays a home and home with every other team in its league, are fading out of college hoops, with fewer and fewer leagues still retaining that schedule purity. Bringing back the double round robin would enhance the meaning of the regular season championship. So I am allowing a maximum of 11 teams in each league in this redesigned college basketball format, which would create then a 20-game conference double round robin. We, of course, will look at this through the lens of Nebraska, and we'll get there in just a minute. Here's the new look at Big 12, Tristan, with the average net rating of these programs being the highest of any conference at 19. Baylor, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas State, Missouri, Oklahoma State, Texas A&M, and Texas Tech. Pretty much the Big 12 that you and I grew up with, except that it's Houston in, Nebraska, Colorado out. I don't think there's a bad team in that bunch. I mean, you are looking at like maybe mediocre Kansas State, maybe mediocre Texas. And Oklahoma State has been kind of up and down recently, but Baylor's going to give you a game. Houston's come in and dominated that conference. Iowa State is really back up under Otzelberger. Kansas is going to Kansas. Missouri a little up and down, but I think they've starting to find their footing. I don't like Porter Moser at Oklahoma. That's a school with a surprising amount of basketball history. A&M, I'm curious to see the direction they go under Bucky McMillan, but they've been pretty solid recently. And Texas Tech, right? All of a sudden a player in a lot of college sports. I am a huge Big 12 basketball guy. I really, for my money, think it's the best, deepest, most consistent conference. And they're able to cut out TCU. They're able to cut out Utah. They're able to cut out BYU, who's going to be really good this year, by the way. So watch out for that. Colorado out as well of this Big 12, obviously. Man, that Big 12, it's loaded as is. But if you can even cut off some of the bottom teams right now, I would not want to be a part of that league if I was Nebraska.
Yeah, 100%. And what would be nice about that, if that was, the league and it's a double round robin, so you're playing a home and a home, is you really get to see who the, best teams are, because they, one, have to win at home. That's extremely important in college basketball. And then after that, you have to play some really good teams on the road. And to be the best, you got to beat the best in their arena. And I think just the quality of basketball then would be so good. And like you said, I think the Big 12 is so fun to watch because every time you watch them, it's a good game. Like there's
Mhm.
always one or two guys on each team when it comes to like Baylor, Texas Tech, that are just dudes and they're just
Mhm.
going back and forth. And so when a Saturday comes and there's plenty of Big 12 basketball on, you really see some of the best talent in all of college basketball and just the most competitive games.
Then we move to the SEC, a net rating 1.2 points on average behind the Big 12. Bama, Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, LSU, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt. I think that makes sense. That's neat. That's tidy. That's the SEC as we know it. Here's the Big 10 then, Tristan. Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Michigan State, Minnesota, Ohio State, Penn State, Purdue, Wisconsin. There's notable name missing there. Who's missing?
Nebraska.
Nebraska is missing from that list, as well as Northwestern. Don't want to forget them in there. Maryland also out of the conference in this setup, and so is Rutgers, as well as a handful of other teams, because that is a 10-team Big Ten conference. So you get rid of the entire Pac-12 wing, Nebraska, Northwestern, Maryland, and Rutgers. That is a fascinating old school type of league. And with no offense to Oregon, who earned a single-digit seed last year, UCLA, same boat. USC's kind of been up and down in that mix as well. Washington, obviously, out of there as well. With no offense to those programs who are kicked out of the league, this is pure, undistilled, uncut Big Ten in all its glory. And that is still one heck of a basketball league, even if you drop off those other 8 teams.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. Just because when it comes to the Big Ten, that just makes you think. When you think Big Ten, those are a lot of schools that just come straight to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would bring rivalry back. Like when you're
Yes.
playing teams twice a
Mhm.
year. That's even before you get into the conference tournament where you can even
Mhm.
play them again. And you'll just see teams maybe go at it a little bit more, have that kind of, rivalry intensity instead of what we see when we'll see, maybe a UCLA Minnesota game where it's like, these
Mhm.
guys really never face each other. It's not, the best basketball. I am really curious to see though where Nebraska fits in if they're not in the Big Ten or that Big 12.
We will certainly get there. They are not in what Jim Root describes as the Power 5 conferences. So they got kicked down a tier. And that's going to be the question ahead of us next segment. The ACC that he lays out: Clemson, Duke, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Maryland, NC State, Carolina, Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Wake Forest. That one I thought was really interesting because that ACC, at least in basketball, you kick out Florida State, you kick out Miami. Those are two pretty big name brand teams that have had their fair share of success in basketball, certainly not consistent. And then the Big East I thought was really fascinating. Its net rating is dragged down a little bit, and I don't know if this is exactly the way that I would have redrawn the Big East. I would have thought the Big East was fine as is, but again, going for geography, going for history, I get why Jim Root went this way. UConn, Georgetown, Pitt, Providence, Rutgers, Seton Hall, St. John, Syracuse, Nova, and West Virginia. Some Catholic 7 Big East with some 2007 Big East. I kind of see what he's going for in that. But now's where I think with those 5 conferences laid out, the Big 12, the SEC, Big 10, ACC, and Big East, that is 52 teams among those 5 conferences, which is almost exactly 1 out of 7 in terms of the number in Division 1, with there being 364 teams, I believe. You're dropping the Power 4 football leagues in the Big East down from 79 to 52. Any single one of these teams, I would say maybe Rutgers is on the outside looking in somewhat consistently. Georgia Tech been a little up and down. Virginia Tech a little up and down. Wake Forest bubble team. Penn State, meh. LSU, meh. Basketball history. Other than that, you can point to like 45 of those teams being, if not shoo-ins for the NCAA tournament, because they would still have automatic qualifiers from other conferences, of course. You can talk yourself into pretty much any one of those teams being a threat on any given year. And I really like how that would be set up for those conferences. And now we'll turn this to Nebraska. Nebraska men's basketball in this hypothetical scenario, Tristan, gets kicked out of the Big Ten and doesn't have a home in the Big 12. Your reaction to that?
I'm pretty astonished by it, especially because it seems like with the Big 12, a lot of the teams that were named in that Big 12 were kind of original, Big 8 schools.
Mm-hmm.
So you would hope that Nebraska would kind of find their way in there. And then also, if you just think of it as a, university and just a brand, Nebraska is up there. when it comes to the amount of money they have, the kind of just history in all sports that they've put together, and just the facilities. So you would hope that they would maybe find their way in there. I think it would be a little odd to not have a school like Nebraska with its brand, huge caliber, not being in one of those power conferences.
The problem is that it's basketball focused.
Yeah.
And that's where Nebraska really falls behind. I mean, you look at the teams that will be in that current Big 12. Baylor has a title, Houston perennial Final Four contender, Iowa State, more history than Nebraska basketball. Kansas is Kansas. Kansas State, I would say, is above Nebraska in terms of branding in basketball. Missouri is closer to Nebraska, but certainly more in the NCAA tournament. They've reached higher peaks. Oklahoma, comparable but better than Nebraska. Oklahoma State would be ahead. Texas ahead. A&M, a little bit ahead. I think they're really picking that up more recently. And then same thing for Texas Tech, right? You have maybe some of that residual Bobby Knight respect for when he finished his career out there. And they've been really good over really the last decade for Texas Tech on a pretty consistent basis. And then, in the Big Ten, really you're saying it's Nebraska and Penn State, I think, for that last spot in terms of brand awareness, right? Now that Iowa, has a bunch of basketball success at the highest level in March, but they're in every other year pretty much. Minnesota, hit or miss. Most of their success is more ancient history than recent history, but probably a slightly better geographic fit, rivalry fit, like you were mentioning as well. But it never feels good to have Nebraska left out of a conversation like that. So I think number one, the warning, for Nebraska men's basketball is get better, because this is plausible. It's not on the table yet, but it wouldn't shock anyone, if Nebraska basketball on its own merits got left out. But then, Tristan, the next conversation is Nebraska football. Watch out. You can't rely on your brand. You can't rely on the scarlet and cream and just on that block end, because a lot of that respect is gone. In a lot of cases, it just feels like Nebraska is kind of a throw-in to these conversations. Do people really believe that Nebraska belongs in these conversations for, they're back, yeah, they're a valuable member? Sure, maybe they are. But I have a sneaking suspicion that there are more people than we would like to admit that view Nebraska as a throw-in on that bottom tier, even for football. And do I think Nebraska would be safe? Yes, but I think Nebraska would be closer to that cut line for that second division, obviously in men's basketball, and then even in football, where if I was Husker fans and Husker administration, getting football and basketball up and rolling again in case something like this ever comes to pass, I think would have to be, priority 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, I've actually thought about that quite a bit, of just how it seems like here in Nebraska, we have a lot of people who, watched us in the 90s and saw the championship, saw the success of the football team, and the basketball team has had, some years, they made the tournament, but nothing super extraordinary. But I am always so curious, what does someone on the East Coast think of Nebraska sports? What is someone that has no, really idea or met anyone, maybe even been to Nebraska, think about University of Nebraska and their athletics? And when you think about that, I guess you almost put into perspective, I guess it's how we maybe think of, maybe especially for the past few years, like a Maryland or,
Sure.
like a school like that.
Sure.
You're one of those ACC schools that doesn't do much, is, Nebraska hasn't really proven themselves in recent years in basketball or football. And so I think you just think, Nebraska's got a big brand, but what have they done to really establish themselves as a team that should be in one of those conferences?
Really to reestablish.
Yeah.
Right. It seems like right now it's a lot of coasting off that reputation. I'm not saying that for the guys that are currently in the building, but in terms of the narrative at large. So let's go to break here. We will tell you where Jim Root put Nebraska. Would this conference be better for Nebraska? Would it be worse for Nebraska? How would it affect the Huskers? And then some other really interesting conference setups. That's coming up next on the Corner 3.
When only the best will do. Sartor Heyman Jewelers.
Rick Heyman here from Sartor Heyman Jewelers. I want to personally thank our great customers for voting us once again the best of Lincoln. At the same time, we're celebrating our 120th year in business in the great state of Nebraska. Visit us at South Point, Grand Island, and the Outlet in downtown Lincoln. Visit us today at sartorheyman.com.
Sartor Heyman Jewelers.
Looking to upgrade your hay equipment this season? Landmark Implement has a lineup of pre-owned balers and windrowers ready to go to work. In the race against time, make sure your hay equipment is up to the task. When you buy used hay equipment from Landmark, you're backed by our extensive parts and service network, complete with mobile techs and parts drop-off points to keep you in the field. Shop all used hay equipment online at landmarkimp.com or stop by your local Landmark to experience the Landmark difference.
Take control of your health with the DASH scan at Advanced Medical Imaging. The DASH scan is a full-body MRI designed for advanced health screening. This dynamic approach provides exceptionally sharp images across multiple organ systems, helping to detect potential concerns early. With minimal radiation and no invasive procedures, the DASH scan offers a safe, comprehensive look at your health. Plus, results are delivered faster than ever, giving both patients and physicians confidence in screening and diagnosis. Your health is too important to wait. Schedule your DASH scan today at Advanced Medical Imaging. Visit amimaging.com or call 402-484-6677 to learn more.
Shopping for new flooring is different today. Getting your questions answered, making the right selection, getting the best value, and installed quickly and professionally. Visit ostreetcarpet.com or shop our store. We'll answer all your questions and help you make the right choice. You'll be enjoying your new floor in just days for less than you'd pay elsewhere. Carpet, vinyl, wood, laminate, tile, and area rugs. We've got it all.
O Street Carpet.
1732 O Street. Family owned and operated. Always the best value.
Jack Russell of Farm Bureau Financial Services is here to help you protect things that are most important to you. Whether it's your home, your family, or your future, Jack Russell has the proven experience to get the job done while developing authentic relationships with you. Give Jack a call today at 402-421-9100. Again, that's 402-421-9100. Or visit one of his 2 locations in Lincoln or Seward and learn how you can excel in the complicated world of insurance. Jack Russell of Farm Bureau Financial Services, a trusted and well-respected representative since 1999.
Finally, a good reason to have a smart house. Just say, Alexa, play 93.7 The Ticket, and we'll magically start playing. How's it work? Nobody knows. Don't ask questions.
You're invited to Valentino's big jumbo anniversary party, and we've got a gift just for you. On Thursday, July 31st, only buy 1 jumbo 16-inch pizza at a regular price and get a second pizza free. Hamburger or cheese pizza only on original crust. It's our way of saying thanks for sharing Valentino's tradition for over 68 years. Celebrate with a slice of Valentino's tradition on us. Pre-orders start July 30th, online, by phone, or in person, and the offer is good for July 31st only. Carry out or delivery at participating Valentino's locations.
Breaking here at the news desk. When you stack Allo Internet, DirecTV, and mobile, you can lock in your price for 2 years. Sources are confirming that when you stack Allo Internet, DirecTV, and mobile, your monthly price drops and you're locked in for 2 years. That's fiber fast internet, premium streaming TV, and reliable nationwide mobile coverage. And this just in, you must switch by Labor Day to secure that locked-in pricing for 2 years. Switch, stack, and save at allofiber.com/stack.
What do you look for when searching for a plumbing company? Integrity? Positive customer reviews? Are they insured and fully licensed? How about a company that has all 3? Deals Plumbing in Lincoln is your go-to certified plumbing company that can help you fix anything from leaks to clogs, water heaters, and more. Give Deals Plumbing a call today at 402-525-7311, or you can visit Deals Plumbing online at dealsplumbing.com.
Nebco is hiring CDL drivers for ready-mixed concrete in Lincoln. With 3 plants across the city, there are plenty of opportunities to start or grow your driving career. They offer great pay, medical and retirement benefits, paid time off, and they cover the cost of CDL training. Apply today and receive a $2,500 hiring bonus. Since 1908, it's the employees that have formed the company's solid foundation. Start your career today with ready-mixed concrete. Visit nebcoinc.com. That's nebcoinc.com.
With UBT, you've got total control over your money. Like Doug, who runs his game day tailgate like a well-oiled machine.
I got burgers, brats, chicken, dogs, plus all the fixins. And with the UBT Go app, I can track my food spending from anywhere.
Pro move.
They don't call me Grill Sergeant for nothing.
No matter your goals, UBT helps you feel good about reaching them. Union Bank and Trust. Member FDIC.
back to the Corner 3 on 93.7 The Ticket. Here is your host, Austin Orman.
So Nebraska got kicked from the Big Ten Conference. Hypothetically. Austin Orman, Tristan Gomes with you here for the Corner 3 on a Saturday edition. Thanks for finding the show. Thanks for tuning in. 402-464-5685. You got any comments or questions? So the Big 12 says, nope, Nebraska, your basketball history is not good enough for us. Since we're just doing our own basketball only thing, we don't want you back. Big 10 says the same thing. They prefer to keep Penn State over Nebraska. They prefer to keep Minnesota over Nebraska. So Nebraska is out of the Big Ten. Obviously, that's not going to be a fit for the SEC, the ACC, or the Big East as it's constructed. So where does Nebraska fit? Again, this is according to Jim Root of The Athletic. He, Tristan, creates a new conference for Nebraska to join, and it is fascinating. Jim Root puts them in the Central Conference, kind of that next group of 5 conferences that he says power-ish conferences. The net rating for the last 5 years on average for this conference would be a 12.2, and power-ish is a good description. That's 1 full point behind the ACC and about half a point behind the Big East. So a little bit of a step down, but certainly within shouting distance. The Central Conference for Jim Root would be comprised of these schools: Butler, Creighton, DePaul, Marquette from the Big East. You throw in Dayton, Loyola Chicago, and St. Louis from the Atlantic 10. You add Memphis from the American. You add Notre Dame from the ACC, and then Nebraska and Northwestern in the Central Division. First blush, Tristan, yay or nay on that conference?
I think it actually would be more competitive than we think, but it would just be weird to have a school like Notre Dame in the same conference as Dayton. Yeah. Just like the size of the school, the history behind it, like that would just be an odd thing to see. And I'm curious what like their arenas look like what Dayton compared to it looks like in South Bend. So
it's fascinating to see those schools bunched together because you have a little bit of the Great Lakes flavor there when you look at Loyola Chicago. You look at Marquette in that conversation, Northwestern, obviously on the banks, DePaul in Chicago. You get some of the Ohio taste, obviously, with Dayton in there. Butler and Notre Dame being in Indiana is interesting. Really, the 2 schools that I think don't make a whole lot of sense to me in this alignment are Memphis and St. Louis. Memphis just feels a little removed and just doesn't feel like they could fit in that. Again, it's a weird fit when you're combining the Big Ten with the Big East, with the A-10, with an ACC school that's never really felt like an ACC school. Sure, it's going to be more a marriage of convenience than anything. But here's what I would do to improve this conference. I would kick Memphis and St. Louis to the quote-unquote Eastern Conference that right now comprises of Cincinnati, Florida Atlantic, Florida State, Miami, Richmond, South Carolina, South Florida, UCF, VCU, and Xavier. I would say get rid of Memphis and St. Louis, send them to that Eastern Conference, and I would add even more Ohio flavor to the Central. I would pluck off Cincinnati and Xavier from that Eastern Conference and put them in the Central. There's a little more old Big East in that setup. There's a stronger Ohio wing, so it's not just kind of Dayton floating on its own. Memphis has always just felt more Southern to me, and I know they'd be playing, a handful of Florida schools there, but it just feels to me like Memphis and VCU have more in common than Memphis and Northwestern or than Memphis and Notre Dame do. So that's how I would rearrange it. But then from the Nebraska-centric perspective, would this actually be better for Nebraska? If you look at, again, just over the last 5 years, so the most recent 5 years of Fred Hoiberg's tenure, Nebraska is 77-83 with 1 NCAA tournament appearance, no wins there, as is widely discussed and panned, and no NBA draft picks. The closest teams in Nebraska's neighborhood over the last 5 years, Tristan, would be Notre Dame at 74-85. They've made 1 tournament, won a game once they got there, had 1 NBA draft pick. You look at Butler, 71-87 over the last 5 years, no NCAA tournaments to show for it. And then maybe throw Northwestern in there. Of course, Nebraska and Northwestern have had some competitive games, but Northwestern's a handful of games better than Nebraska at 85-71, made the tourney a couple times, and actually won a game each of the last 2 times they've made it, haven't advanced past the second round, but have done that. And so that's really the the mid-tier of competition that Nebraska would be fighting with. Compare that to the Big Ten, where let's just go ahead and pull up the Big Ten standings from last season. The teams that Nebraska more often than not was fighting or should be fighting in that middle of the conference. You think about a Wisconsin, right? More basketball history, probably pick them ahead of Nebraska more often than not. But in that conversation, Illinois, who knows what they're going to be year to year. Oregon, I think conference-wise is kind of in that picture. Indiana has been there recently. Ohio State, Rutgers, Iowa, Minnesota, Northwestern, USC. Those are all the teams that were more in that 3-game stretch from Nebraska's record down at 7-13. I mean, you go through what Wisconsin's done in terms of basketball history, Illinois' history, where they're located. Oregon and Dana Altman are incredibly consistent. Indiana maybe has some new life. I really like Ohio State's team this year. We'll get into that with our Big Ten preview episode coming up in the very near future here on the Corner 3. Rutgers, meh, whatever. Iowa, though, there's no reason that Iowa needs to be that much better at basketball than Nebraska. Minnesota in the same realm, Northwestern and USC. When you look at it from the day-to-day conference grind perspective, I think it would be better for Nebraska basketball success to have a Northwestern, Notre Dame, even, Butler kind of middle tier. I feel like that's probably easier for Nebraska to climb consistently. But then we get to this problem. Just because it's easier for you to climb consistently, would it be better to finish 5th in the Central Conference or climb above those teams we mentioned to finish 5th in the Big Ten? And like you were saying, I think that would be a huge, drop kick to the nuts of the narrative for Nebraska, where they wouldn't be able to ride necessarily the strength of the Big Ten. Oh, it's such a deep league, and those coattails, and maybe get some of that narrative boost for finishing 5th in the Big Ten compared to getting relegated to this Central Conference and finishing 5th there.
Yeah, because you can finish 9th in the Big Ten and you're still probably in the tournament.
Yeah.
Right. So you can lose a few of those games. But I think the nice thing about this and kind of what you're talking about in the middle of the pack teams is I see it more likely for Nebraska to go on the road to a Butler, to a Northwestern, to a Notre Dame, and put up a fight. Maybe win those games to set themselves up to be better in that conference. Where in the Big Ten from Nebraska, I think we've seen them struggle a little bit on the road, especially when they play those top tier teams. When they head to Michigan, when they head to Purdue, those are just games where you watch Nebraska and you're like, we've seen so much better out of you. But I think in this Central Conference, they'd have the ability to go on the road and make a statement and maybe be a little bit more competitive. Because I think that's what's just been their struggle is you watch Nebraska play at PBA and they are lights out. You'll watch them beat great teams, upset great teams, and then they'll play that team again on the road and it's totally different. And so
whether the road game happened first or the home game happened either way.
Yeah. And it's just a totally different kind of team. So a conference that maybe just allows them to go on the road and, be a little bit more consistent and maybe have a little bit better travel. You're not having to go to the West Coast, or you're not having to go, all the way out to Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers. Having kind of that smaller region where the travel's easier and the teams that you're playing are similar to you in a sense.
Do you think it would make recruiting easier or harder for Nebraska?
I want to say harder just because they're in that kind of like power-ish conference. So they're probably not getting the, they haven't been getting the top recruits, but they're still getting solid recruits, guys that are rated highly in their respective state. Well, those guys are most likely going to go to, the Kansas or those teams in the Big 12 or the Big 10 rather than this Central Conference. So I still think they can get good recruits, but it's going to be tougher to get those higher end recruits.
No, I think that's fair, and that's kind of always been the challenge for Nebraska men's basketball. Obviously, they landed Colin Rice, a pretty well thought of 4-star. We were actually in Vegas for Big Ten Media Days. I think it would make it simpler. I don't know if it would make it easier, harder, better, or worse. Just because if you look at, again, this competition of the Central Division, not a lot of heavy hitters in terms of recruiting. Creighton will pull a 4-star from time to time. Marquette occasionally as well. But other than that, maybe Memphis in the draw of Penny Hardaway in terms of recruiting. But Shrewsbury at Notre Dame hasn't exactly, lit it up in high school recruiting at the very least. Chris Collins is finding a bunch of under-the-radar guys. Dayton will get a weird one here and there. They have a little bit of a reputation for that. But other than that, Nebraska, I think, would be on much more even ground when it comes to recruiting in a conference like this, which I think would go to help the Huskers. Who would they potentially be chasing, though, in this conference with some ground to make up? If you go by just the last 5 years, there are two teams with 119 wins in the last 5 years. That would be Memphis and Creighton. Creighton's been to the last 5 NCAA tournaments, won 9 games. Memphis has been thrice and won once. Other teams over 100 wins, you look at Marquette, 111 and 55 over the last 5 years, been in the NCAA tournament 4 times. You throw Loyola Chicago in that mix. Really only one bad year under Drew Valentine as they transition from the Missouri Valley to the Atlantic 10. They were back over 20 wins last year. They've won 109 games over the last 5 years. Dayton has won 108 games. And then even not far behind that, St. Louis at 90 and 66 over in the Atlantic 10. So then it leads me to this, Trish. Number one, this conference, I think, would really be hoping to become what the Mountain West has been in a lot of ways. Just a rock fight of a league, maybe not anything flashy, over the top, dramatic, maybe get the outlier here or there. But again, I think Creighton Marquette would feel pretty good about their chances here. I think Memphis would like its style of play as kind of the outlier here in this conference. And then it's a bunch of teams that are like, okay, let's see what you got. Dayton with a little bit of history, they should be, in the top half of the league pretty much every year. Notre Dame up and down. Northwestern, I think, would be a pretty consistent top of the middle group, even in this league. Maybe I'm selling Chris Collins short, but I just don't see a whole bunch of ceiling there for Northwestern. And so as we bring this conversation then back around to Nebraska, would this conference give Nebraska the opportunity to dominate it? I don't think so. I think it would give Nebraska a chance to be more consistent in terms of finishing in the top half. But if you look at the Mountain West, what it's done over the last, let's just do 5 years because that's the sample. 2021 NCAA tournament saw 2 Mountain West teams. 2022 tournament saw 4 of them. Same number in 2023. The 24 version of the NCAA tournament was a banner year for the Mountain West. They got 6 teams in the tournament, besting the previous best, which was 5 set all the way back in 2013. And that's the only time they've had 5 or more bids those 2 years. But then even last year, 4 bids. So if you think about this Central Conference just on a year-to-year basis, and you're thinking, okay, let's assume 3 bids almost automatically. We can all but Sharpie in a 4th. You're looking at Creighton. You're looking at Marquette. And I do think you're looking at Memphis pretty consistently as long as Penny's there. I've said this on this program a number of times, and it just bears repeating. I don't know how Penny Hardaway has been able to do what Penny Hardaway has done because of all the scandals that constantly hit Memphis. But Penny at Memphis has won 70% of his games. He has never won fewer than 20 games in a season, despite the whole Penny Hardaway nature of everything going on at Memphis, which is insane. So we have to give them a begrudging sort of benefit of the doubt, even coming over from the American Conference. So then, would you rather see Nebraska fighting for that 4th or maybe 5th spot in the Central Conference, or would it be better for Nebraska to be fighting for that 4th or 5th spot in that new look Big Ten, do you think?
I honestly like this new conference because I love the comparison of the Mountain West. Because what we see in the Mountain West is it's not the 4 stars, it's not the 5 stars,
right.
It's not the great, the guys you hear all the headlines about, but it's the teams that when you watch them, they just play so well together. And when you play in an evenly matched conference and you have to find ways to consistently win closer games, I feel like that's what builds a team to be great. So when it comes tournament time, the Mountain West, I feel like the schools that make the tournament, they're teams you don't really want to play. Like you look at them and you're like, wow, these teams are extremely well-rounded and they just play good basketball. Because they have to in order to win in their conference. They can't play bad basketball or else they're going to be moved to the bottom. So when you compare it to the Mountain West in that sense, being 4th or 5th for Nebraska in this new conference, this Central Conference, almost means that like you're playing teams very evenly matched. You have to find a way to win close games. So if you do find a way to make the tournament, you're ready for these crunch time moments, which we see is huge in March Madness all the time.
Yeah, I mean, Nebraska would not be, or not seem at least, as outgunned from a resources or history perspective, I think, in this conference as it potentially would in that current Big Ten that the Huskers reside in. I mean, that is a loaded conference from top to bottom. I mean, historically good. We don't talk about it enough because of how good the SEC was. But then it leads me to this. If Nebraska's in that conference, fighting for, maybe third any given year, but probably more fourth or fifth, that's middle of the pack in a upper middle of the pack sort of conference in this setup. Is that better? Would fans invest more in Nebraska basketball if they saw a quote unquote more manageable conference, or would fans lose interest? I really don't know. And then not lose interest as in stop showing up, but even in terms of the athletic department, would Nebraska invest in Nebraska men's basketball to the level that it needs to? Because I made this comparison, and this is what came to mind. I'm happy to have a conversation about it if you think I'm wrong. But if you look at the history, if you look at the resources and the overall investment, not saying just facilities, not saying just players, but everything pooled together, Nebraska's resume as a program is essentially a mid-major resume. And so I do think that in terms of how seriously Nebraska has chosen to take basketball, and more importantly, the return on investment or lack thereof that Nebraska has consistently gotten, I think that a mid-major-ish conference, low power major, high mid-major conference like this is pretty much where Nebraska has been as a program historically. I like Nebraska in the current Big Ten because I think it gives the Huskers something to shoot for. It gives them something to follow in terms of model. Here are the teams that are consistently good. Here's how they get it done. Here's how we fit in. And here's how we stand out at the same time. I do think that, seeing Nebraska, I think last year picked to finish 12th in the Big Ten, hanging on for dear life to a conference tournament spot, which they ultimately didn't do. But it just doesn't feel good to finish 12th in a conference and still talk yourself into being an NCAA tournament team. And I don't know if that's a conference expansion problem, an NCAA tournament expansion problem, a bid selection problem, probably a combination of all of those. But my gut tells me, Tristan, that if Nebraska were to get relegated, such as it were to a conference like this, number one, I think Husker fans would be upset at first. That'd be their initial reaction. No, we're in Nebraska. We have the brand. We have the N. I think there would be that denial, grief, rage, anger stage happening. But I do think before too long, Husker fans would look at the facts and say, this is what our basketball program has been. It makes sense that we got put where we did in this hypothetical realignment in college basketball. And now we have a great opportunity in front of us. Just because we're in a league that's maybe not thought of as well, we can legitimately come in here and make a splash. If we invest, if we believe that Fred Hoiberg has things on the right track, back-to-back 20-win seasons for the first time since the 90s would lead you to believe that that's the case. I think it would be a shock for a couple years for Husker fans, but I do think long-term, Nebraska has a better chance to consistently finish in the top half of this made-up Central Conference than it would in the current Big Ten.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, especially because it'd be nicer for Nebraska to be playing teams that are closer to their standard rather than, fighting those middle of the pack Big Ten teams that they're currently fighting with for, 9th, 10th. It'd be nice to see them in a conference where they're just competing day in and day out against teams that are similar to them. So if they do win that conference, it really goes to show how great of basketball they're playing, but how just established they've became to win that conference. Because, just based on the history and the success we've seen from Nebraska recently, I'm not sure we'll ever see them, really at the top consistently of the current Big Ten.
I tend to agree. Let's go ahead and take our final break of the show. We'll wrap up the corner three, get you set up for the Law of Lift right after this.
Put lawn irrigation on automatic. Think Judson Irrigation for worry-free service to Lincoln homeowners and business community. Judson Irrigation will turn on your sprinkler system in the spring, repair or redesign as needed, and turn it off in the fall. For service to orphan sprinklers, remember Judson Irrigation. They'll never forget you.
Call the Judson Irrigation Orphanage 402-420-6277 or judsonirrigation.com.
Hi, Sean Callahan here for Koppel Chevrolet GMC. This month kicks off Koppel's 50th anniversary sale. We're celebrating 50 years by offering an additional $500 discount to the next 100 customers that buy a new vehicle. This is in addition to the huge savings already in place. You can take an extra $500 off our discounted price, or we can cut you a check on the spot. Celebrate with savings and see why customers have trusted Koppel since 1975. It's our way of saying thank you for all these years.
program and other bonus programs. Build a better career today with great team culture at Gaina Trucking. Learn more and apply today at GainaTrucking.com.
What's better than supporting your favorite radio station and eating delicious Nebraska-made products? Smoking Gun Jerky of Nebraska wants to highlight you, the listener, on the 93.7 The Ticket Wall of Fame at the store. Stop by the store at 48th and R in Lincoln and see their huge variety of small batch gourmet jerky. Or if you're not in the area and want to try some, go to smokinggunjerky.com and enter code EARLY for 10% off your purchase. It's the ultimate low-calorie, high-protein snack at Smoking Gun Jerky of Nebraska.
Looking for a financial partner that truly makes a difference? Modern Woodman is a member-owned fraternal financial services organization. We can help you plan for all stages of life, from protection to saving to retirement. We also offer member benefits, social activities, and volunteer opportunities to help your family and community.
I'm Sean Erickson, your Modern Woodman representative in Lincoln. Call me at 402-483-6515 to start the conversation.
Modern Woodman of America, touching lives, securing futures.
A1 Automotive's second location is now open at 5110 State Hill Drive, just off of Yankee Hill Road. The new location continues to specialize in all makes and models and provides personalized service as they have for 15 years. To honor the new store opening, A1 is offering $25 off any service over $300, $50 off services over $500, and $75 off services that total over $750, all through July 31st. Schedule your appointment today at a1autolincoln.com and visit their new location in South Lincoln at 5110 State Hill Drive.
You're invited to Valentino's big jumbo anniversary party, and we've got a gift just for you. On Thursday, July 31st, only buy one jumbo 16-inch pizza at a regular price and get a second pizza free. Hamburger or cheese pizza only on original crust. It's our way of saying thanks for sharing Valentino's tradition for over 68 years. Celebrate with a slice of Valentino's tradition on us. Pre-orders start July 30th, online, by phone, or in person, and the offer is good for July 31st only. Carry-out or delivery at participating Valentino's locations.
Shopping for new flooring is different today. Getting your questions answered, making the right selection, getting the best value, and installed quickly and professionally. Visit ostreetcarpet.com or shop our store. We'll answer all your questions and help you make the right choice. You'll be enjoying your new floor in just days for less than you'd pay elsewhere. Carpet, vinyl, wood, laminate, tile, and area rugs. We've got it all.
O Street Carpet.
1732 O Street. Family owned and operated. Always the best value.
Jack Russell of Farm Bureau Financial Services is here to help you protect things that are most important to you. Whether it's your home, your family, or your future, Jack Russell has the proven experience to get the job done while developing authentic relationships with you. Give Jack a call today at 402-421-9100. Again, that's 402-421-9100. Or visit one of his 2 locations in Lincoln or Seward and learn how you can excel in the complicated world of insurance. Jack Russell of Farm Bureau Financial Services, a trusted and well-respected representative since 1999.
Back to the Corner 3 on 93.7 The Ticket. Here is your host, Austin Orman.
Wrapping up the Corner 3 here on a Saturday. Big thanks to Tristan running the board, having some conversation with me here. Let's just wrap up this conversation. Just a couple interesting other notes from this college basketball hypothetical realignment that kicks Nebraska out of both the Big Ten and the Big 12 to kind of an upper level mid-major fringe power conference. The West Coast Conference is wildly fascinating as proposed. Obviously, Gonzaga is in there. You throw in St. Mary's and San Diego State. Yes, please. That's just hook it right in here. Right here. I'll take that. BYU in there. Grand Canyon, kind of fun. San Francisco, Santa Clara, Utah State, BYU. Yes, I am in on the WCC. Pac-12 makes too much sense. It is the old Pac-10. Yes, perfect, cool, neat and tidy there. Mountain West. Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno, New Mexico State, Nevada. SMU, TCU get kicked out to the Mountain West Conference. UNLV and UTEP. So a little Texas flavor to a mountain region conference. Not mad at that one at all. But if there's a team, a school, Tristan, that I think has maybe the biggest gripe, it would be Boston College. Now, they were not listed in the ACC. They were not listed in the Big East. They were not listed in that Eastern Conference that we gave you because that one trended more toward the South and east part of the country. Boston College would get kicked to the A10 alongside programs like Duquesne, Fordham, George Mason, George Washington, LaSalle, UMass, Rhode Island, St. Joe's, St. Bonaventure, and Temple. If you didn't like Nebraska getting kicked out of the Big Ten and the Big 12, at least they landed somewhere with teams with a pulse. I mean, Boston College is not a good basketball team or program, but if you're telling me they're fighting the occasional St. Joseph's pop-up and just a bunch of like fringe mid-current A10 teams, I would like to think Boston College would be very offended, but also in a very good position to help run that conference.
Yeah, that's a tough, demotion going from the ACC, which for years people could say is the best basketball conference, all the way to this A10.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what's hard about this conference realignment is I don't know if you really need to, really take away some of these schools, but almost just split some of these conferences in half and then bring a few different ones in. Like if they almost went back to the East and West of the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't need to. And then we cut, maybe the Big East in half and we have the East part of the Big Ten and the Big East. That's one conference. The East or the West of the Big Ten, Big East. That's one conference. So Creighton, Marquette, those schools would be a part of,
DePaul, Butler.
Yes, they'd be playing Nebraska, Iowa, Northwestern, Wisconsin. I think that makes a little bit more sense, especially you could do the same for the ACC, just in North and South. Because, there are some of these schools that maybe are joining conferences where, one, they might just be dominant. And then also, when you put like a Penn State, you're keeping them in the Big Ten. I'm not sure how competitive they're going to be.
They will not be competitive. There's just not a really good spot to put them unless you're going to throw them in the Big East, which, according to the rules that Jim Root laid out, would be one too many teams. And I don't think it would go much better for them in the Big East. So enjoy your spot in the Big Ten, then Penn State. The other one that I think I look back on, and I'm just kind of sad for them, is Wichita State. They got booted out of the Missouri Valley, which is, to be fair, even already a bit of a watered down version of the Missouri Valley that back in the day I grew up with. But I would kick Murray State out of this proposed Missouri Valley and put them in that Texas/South region and move Wichita State back to the Mo Valley. That Mo Valley, when we would have been growing up, you think about your Creighton, Wichita State, Bradley, Southern Illinois, Evansville, Indiana State. Yes, please. Why does Wichita State get the boot all the way down south where there's no one close to them? The closest school to Wichita State in this, I think, would be North Texas somehow, which is kind of, maybe Tulsa. It'd be Tulsa. Sorry, in Oklahoma, I skipped past them. But man, to go from Wichita to Tulsa to primarily Texas, and then you throw in Louisiana Tech, UAB in there, I don't like that for Wichita State. And I'm sorry, I just think as a program, they deserve better. Maybe that's a homer take. I don't know. But we'll get out of here. We'll put the bow on this episode of The Corner 3. Tristan, appreciate the college basketball talk, my man. Thanks for doing it.
I know. I love all ball talk. I think there isn't really a better time of the year than March Madness, but there's so much that goes into it to see all these teams. I have to get there first. Hopefully we can see Nebraska have a little bit more success and maybe, make it to the tournament and even win a ball game. So thanks for having me.
I'm going to throw this out here. Don't know if I can promise it, but how interested are you in basketball postgame running the board?
I'd love to do it. I feel like I haven't gone enough to Nebraska ball games, and I feel like it's going to be a whole different team this year. So the more basketball games I can go to, the better. And just ball talk there's nothing better.
It's the life. It's what we do here on the Corner 3 podcast. For Tristan, I'm Austin. This will be podcasted up and ready for you here in just a moment. Thanks a ton for tuning in. We got the Law of Lift next here on 93.7 The Ticket.
Looking for a fun way to give back? Join us for the 2025 Kicks for Kids Nebraska Fun Run Walk, presented by Pinnacle Bank, on Saturday, August 23rd at James Arthur Vineyard. Enjoy a scenic 5K through beautiful grounds. Every step helps provide shoes to kids in Lincoln and Lancaster County schools.